I got the job in a rather unusual way, in the part of Harris in Doctor Who. In those days, we're talking 1968, there was a number at the television centre in Wood Lane that you could ring and find out who was actually casting, which directors were actually casting, because in those days all the TV directors were under one roof. And I was looking for work, rang the number, and a voice said, well, a director called Hugh David is looking for a youngish fellow to play the part of a scientist named Harris in a Doctor Who serial called The Fury from the Deep. So I duly sat down and either typed or wrote a letter, closed a photograph, gave my agent's number, that sort of thing. And 3 days later he rang up and said, oh, a chap named Hugh David wants you to go to TV Centre and read for the part of Harris in a serial called The Fury from the Deep. I went, met Hugh David, a lovely man, always a benign presence, never got irritated or shouted or anything like that in rehearsal, and he gave me the part. The rehearsal, BBC rehearsals in those days, always took place in boys' clubs scattered throughout West London. I must have been in at least 15, I think, in the time I was doing television. They were army huts, I think. They must have been bought from the War Office after World War I, I think. Some of them were rather old and faded. Usually a stage at one end, perhaps a tea counter at the other, wooden floor, wooden walls, that sort of thing. The people owning them must have made a fortune, I think, until the BBC built their own block of rehearsal rooms at Acton. They're just next door to Acton Tube Station, and came to be known as the Acton Hilton. Patrick Troughton was a lovely family man. I think I got from him the idea of minimalist acting. I don't say minimalist in a pejorative sense, but in a positive, interactive sense. He was a marvellous actor because he did so little. Of course, being the chief part in a serial that goes on perhaps for 6 months, 9 months of the year, you learn how to pace yourself. But he was a beautiful object lesson in how to do it with the least possible, I won't say effort, but the least possible attack. He was also a very kindly presence. I remember he was a caravan man, because at the time he used to talk about going for holidays, taking his family on holiday and you know, with the caravan behind the car. What amazes me about Doctor Who, I was in The Fury from the Deep and also in a thing called The Ark 2 years previously, is the fact that even today in 2004 I still get letters from people asking for photographs. Sometimes you get a tape sent, would you contribute a little memoir to this thing? You get letters from people telling you how their activities with Doctor Who clubs are raising money for cancer and things like that. It's astounding, but it's also rather wonderful. I think D.H. Lawrence, writing an article about collecting books in 1925, ended it by saying all the effort that people make and all they collect is really building a monument to man's eternal fight with inertia. Fury from the Deep writer Victor Pemberton started his writing career when a friend challenged him to write a play. This resulted in the beginning of a successful career and a string of plays for radio. To supplement his income, Pemberton also worked as an actor, and in 1967 was offered the role of Jules in the Doctor Who story The Moon Base. Shortly afterwards, he was asked by story editor Peter Bryant to act as his deputy for a 3-month trial period. Pemberton began as Bryant's assistant on The Evil of the Daleks and received a full story editor credit for The Tomb of the Cybermen when Bryant stood in as producer. Pemberton decided not to continue as story editor after this trial period. He was, however, persuaded to resubmit a storyline entitled The Slide, which had been rejected for Doctor Who some years earlier and subsequently made into a BBC radio play. The story concerned a sentient form of mud taking over a village. Pemberton changed the mud to seaweed and the village location to an oil rig and retitled the story The Colony of Devils. News story editor Derek Sherwin made some changes to the script, including the ending. Originally, the weed was destroyed by the sound of Jamie playing the bagpipes, but this was changed to the sound of Victoria's amplified screams. Shortly before recording, the story title was changed to Fury from the Deep. Former actor Hugh David was assigned to direct the serial. He had previously directed the second Patrick Troughton story, The Highlanders, and was married to actress Wendy Williams, who later appeared as Vira in The Ark in Space. Victor Madden was cast as Chief Robson, and John Abineri, who Hugh David had previously worked with on the series Knight Errant, was cast as Van Lutyens. Abineri later appeared alongside John Pertwee's Doctor as General Carrington in the story The Ambassadors of Death, and as Captain Railton in Death to the Daleks. His final Doctor Who appearance was with Tom Baker's Doctor as Rankin in The Power of Kroll. Location filming started in February 1968 at the Red Sands Sea Fort in the Thames estuary, which represented the oil refinery. Red Sands had originally been built as a sea defence platform and later been host to a pirate radio station, but it had been abandoned for some years and had been used in several other TV shows, including Danger Man. Botany Bay on the Kent coast was the location for the early scenes on the beach, where filming attracted much local interest. Helicopters were hired for the filming, enabling a camera to be mounted in one whilst filming the other. Patrick Troughton refused to fly in the helicopter, and so the pilot acted as his double in long shots, with cutaway shots of the Doctor in close-up filmed on the ground. A helicopter was also used to achieve the unusual materialization of the TARDIS at the start of episode 1. For this shot, the model police box prop was lowered on a wire from one of the helicopters to achieve the effect of the TARDIS landing on the sea. The Doctor's sonic screwdriver debuted in this serial, although the actual prop used at the time was just a pen torch. A sonic screwdriver was to become a regular and faithful tool for subsequent Doctors over the following years, until the pteroleptils destroyed it in the Visitation. Sets for the Harris's apartment and the impeller room were constructed at the BBC's Ealing Film Studios for pre-filmed sequences. These sets were required to be flooded with foam generated from firefighting equipment purchased by the BBC Visual Effects Department. Visual effects designer Peter Day played the role of the weed creature as it emerged from the foam bursting into the impeller room in the final episode. To achieve the effect of Oak and Quill emitting gas from their mouths, a sound effect of hissing gas was used. Interestingly, to blacken the inside of the actors' mouths, they had to chew charcoal biscuits prior to the scene being filmed. The eerie effect this produced was very effective. Fury from the Deep is the only story from Season 5 for which no complete episodes exist, although in recent years a few short clips have been recovered from the Australian censors and some unused takes of the weed creature were found at the BBC. Loose Cannon have combined the John Cura telesnaps, the surviving soundtracks and the recovered clips in this reconstruction of Fury from the Deep. The TARDIS makes a rather unconventional landing on the sea, just off the east coast of England. The Doctor, Jamie and Victoria soon come across a pipeline from a North Sea gas refinery. But emanating from the pipeline is the steady rhythmic pulse of what sounds like a heartbeat.